Hello everybody, welcome to my little corner of the internet. This is editing me, realizing that I filmed everything in the wrong format. As you can see, I am new to YouTube. However, I am also a busy mom, so I don't have time to refilm this entire thing. So please bear with me. I will make sure next time I film that we have the correct format. But for today, this is just how it's going to be. Today I just wanted to share a few recent art supply purchases. Before we get into it, a little caveat, I just wanted to say I am not a professional artist. I am just doing this as a hobby, and I have recently been getting a little bit more into the details of watercolor painting, and I'm looking more at values and color mixing. I'm curious about the quality of the paper that I'm using, and so those are the kinds of things that were in the back of my mind when I was making some of these purchases. So, without further ado, let's have a look at some of the things that I purchased. So, firstly, I picked up just some half pans because I was running out. I like getting the ones with the rounded corners because it makes them easier to fit into these palettes that have the rounded corners here. So that's why I got the ones that I did. Then to the more interesting stuff, I picked up a lot of sketchbooks and paper. So up till now, I have been using the Talons Art Creation sketchbooks, which, as we all know, are not watercolor sketchbooks. The paper is pretty decent. It does handle watercolor pretty well. It has a little bit of buckling, but it's perfectly fine for going out and doing, just little sketches here and there. And personally, as more of a beginner, I also like not having to feel super precious about my paper. Um, so I like being able to just go ahead and paint and not worry if I'm wasting my paper on a painting that's not going to work out. That being said, as I've gotten more into my watercolors and have learned more about watercolor painting, I have become more curious about better quality paper and how the water and the paints and stuff would react on the better paper. And so I did want to try and explore that a little bit. Now, I haven't purchased any excessively expensive papers, but I have picked up two small sketchbooks. These are the Semi Art watercolor handbooks. They are 300 GSM. This is the small one. So they are just a sort of textured watercolor paper. They are perforated, so you can pull it out if you want. And they do have a little pocket at the back. I thought these would be nice little sketchbooks to throw in a handbag or take on a holiday or something like that. I then couldn't resist and saw this little sort of almost onion paper sketchbook. Now, obviously, the real onion paper sketchbook is quite expensive, but I thought this might be fun just to play around. I then picked up this little watercolor book. This again has slightly textured paper. It's not cotton or anything like that. It's 250 GSM. And I thought this would be good for practicing at home as well. I then picked up this little concertina sketchbook, which is 300 GSM. And I thought this might be quite fun again for a holiday or something along those lines to keep as a memory. And then I decided to investigate the cotton side of things. And I purchased firstly this 300 GSM little watercolor pad, which is 35% cotton. And then I found these two pads, which are also 300 GSM, and they are 60% cotton. And so I am going to be very interested to see what the difference is in experience between my very inexpensive non-watercolor paper compared to then the different qualities of cotton paper. I will probably do a video about what that experience is from my perspective as a beginner. If that is something that would be interesting, leave a comment down below and I will definitely be happy to do that. So next, onto brushes. So initially when I first started painting, I bought any old cheap brush that I could get hold of and painted. I didn't know the importance of the difference between synthetic hairs and natural hairs, and the capacity of the brush to hold the water and the pigment, and what an influence that had on the watercolor and the distribution of the pigment on the paper. So I went ahead and I purchased these 3 sort of quill style brushes. Now this one, as we can see, I did already get into because I have 0 patience and I wanted to try one of them. So I did get into this one, and it is night and day to have a brush that holds a wonderful amount of water and pigment, where one can make beautiful washes. The pigment, listen to me. The paintbrush does come to a beautiful point once you wet it. Let me just give a bit of an example there. So once it is wet, it does come to a lovely point. Once you have it on the brush, you can make beautiful washes, obviously, but it is also goes to a lovely point, so one can actually do some pretty nice fine lines, and some pretty nice brush strokes. So I'm definitely very happy with these brushes. I have not yet tried the other 2 sizes because I wanted also to be able to show how they are packaged. So they came very nicely packaged with an additional protection on the front here. And this is what the brush looks like, completely new and unused. So I bought 3 sizes. I bought an 8, which is quite a large one. I bought a little 2. And then the last one that I purchased was this 4. Let's see if we can get into this one as well. It's a bit difficult to open. This 4. And I have a suspicion that this one might be a favorite once I start using it, but I will keep you updated. And then last but not least, down to the fun part, of course, which is the actual paints themselves. So I did have to purchase some new paints. Some of my colors were running out, and I also wanted to try a few new things. So in this journey, when I initially started painting again, I simply bought a cheap set of paints that I had no idea what they were or what they did. I just bought them and painted. I didn't know anything about color mixing or anything like that. Of course, over the journey, again, I've learned a lot. And I have also developed preferences for certain colors. So, for example, Payne's Grey, Sap Green, very common colors that are used. Through trial and error, I have discovered that in Payne's Grey, Winsor & Newton is my favorite one because it has a beautiful bluish undertone to it that I really like, compared to some other Payne's Greys. And Sap Green, I really love the Daniel Smith. It has a slightly more natural look to it than some of the other Sap Greens. So here, for example, is a Rembrandt Sap Green. And as we can see, this is a very virulent sort of color. This is not coming out very well because it hasn't been used for a long time and it's a lot of binders coming out. But I don't like this. It's very unnatural to me. I know that obviously I can mix it, but I also want to have a nice, convenient screen. So I, after much research, found this Daniel Smith. And as a comparison, if we look here at the Daniel Smith next to this Rembrandt one, we can see that that is a pretty drastic difference. and I love the more natural, slightly almost olivey nature of the Daniel Smith sap green. Okay, I wasn't able to find a different Payne's Grey to show the comparison, but if we look at this Winsor & Newton Payne's Grey, we see in the mass tone, it's obviously very dark, but still has that beautiful bluish undertone. And if we water it out, we see that beautiful bluish undertone that I really like in the Payne's Grey. So those were two replacement colors. I also purchased a replacement for my raw umber. I got this one from Winsor & Newton. Let's do a quick sample of that here for you. So this is just a beautiful raw umber. I also purchased a replacement of a raw sienna. Let's show that one quickly. That is this one here, which is quite similar in some ways to the raw umber, I suppose, under the light here. However, it's beautiful for glazing, giving a sunlit feel to a dappled tree leaves or something. I used it here in this painting where I was trying to represent the early morning sunshine. So that's been a nice favorite. I also picked up a Prussian blue because mine is nearly finished, and I also love Prussian blue. Let's give you an example of that one. So this is a sort of slightly greenish leaning inky blue, which is lovely. Also great for deepening greens, for example. And then we come to the new colors that I purchased that I wanted to try. So I picked up an Aureolin. I don't know exactly how you pronounce that, but I saw a lot of people using it. It's basically a nickel azo yellow, and I loved it once again for bringing light to greenery. It gives a beautiful glow. I then purchased an Indanthrone Blue from Rosa just to give a try, and I actually also really like this. Just give a bit of an example there. It is a beautiful, deep, deep, fresh blue color. I then had seen a lot of people in their palettes have a quinacridone rose or an opera rose or something like that. I have never been somebody to have anything pink in my palette, but after looking at some of the gorgeous mixes that people were making with pinks, I had to absolutely give it a try. So I got this quinacridone rose from Rembrandt. On its own, it is not a color that I think I would probably ever use. However, if I mix it, for example, with my quinacridone gold, I get some very beautiful and interesting colors. And again, if I mix it with some of my blues, I also get some really lovely purples. So I will experiment further with that color. The last one that I purchased was this Undersea Green by Daniel Smith, which I have seen so many people use in their palettes, and I do not regret that for 1 second. It is a stunning color, and I thoroughly enjoy painting with this. I used it here in this picture. It is a beautiful sort of kelp moss kind of green color. I know obviously one can mix things like this oneself with a nickel azo and an ultramarine and stuff, but like I said, I love greens. Greens and blues are my favorite colors in the art world, and having a couple of convenience greens for me is definitely a game changer. I am very curious about a few other Danielle Smith colors, like Perylene Green, for example, but paints are expensive. So I will be using what I currently have here for now, and we will make further experiments at another stage. The last color that I purchased was this Winsor Newton Potter's Pink. Again, a color that I've seen quite a lot of people using, and I was very curious about. And so I purchased this one. Of course, as you can see, I had no patience and put it straight into my palette so that I could use it. It is a beautiful color to represent sort of buildings, maybe in the city that I live in, or to add little dabs of color to, for example, a mountain scene like that, or here is another mountain scene where I added some into the sky here. So it's a beautiful color, and it granulates beautifully as well, and just adds a little touch of interest to a lot of different things and to a lot of different mixes as well. So I am very happy with all of my recent purchases, and I cannot wait to continue playing with all of them and painting. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know if any of these are favorites, or if you also have specific brands of certain colors that you like, or if you are also a beginner, what your experience has been with better quality papers as opposed to cheaper quality papers. Let's get a chat open in the comments, and I will see you in my next video with some new paintings.